Hello and welcome to episode number 6. It is the Hilarious Humanitarians. I am Frances Echeverria, licensed marriage and family therapist, and joining me, Deanna Silverman. Hello.
Hello there. Number six.
Number six. And you represent the world of the licensed clinical social workers. This is a podcast that is started from Hilarious Humanitarian, the Instagram account. That would be Deanna, and I would be the tag along making up the S. As you're listening today, we ask that you take a moment and please review us on iTunes, Google Play as well. Shamelessly asking for your approval. We're not above it, right?
Nope, not above it at all. Sorry.
I would say job security.
The way of the world.
Job security, except we're not making any money off of it. But we would like to help spread the word of positivity and mental health. So that is where you come in by enjoying this podcast and being sure to review and share. So, Deanna, today we're talking apologies.
Yes. So we're going to be doing sorry, not sorry.
Yes, we're going to do the times that when you were actually sorry and how those apologies went. The times that you should have said sorry, but you were kind of being a jerk.
Right.
And you had mentioned off the air that was primarily your 20s.
Yes. I was kind of jerky then.
And I'm going to, in that particular one, I'm going to bring up in terms of parenting. Now, you and I are in two different stages of parenting. Your child's still young. Mine are 7 and 9. So this is going to come from like a parenting perspective. So we have that. And then we have those times when you are not sorry at all. And you shouldn't be.
Not at all. Not even for a second.
All right. So to go ahead and start it off, I think that we should maybe start with when was the most recent time you had to apologize, Deanna?
On my Instagram, Hilarious Humanitarian. I do pride myself on being pretty thoughtful in my content, like curation, right? Is that the right word here?
It sounds like a big word. We'll go with it.
Right. Big word. All right. Do I get a point for today?
Yes.
All right. Anyways. But once in a while, I make mistakes. I am human. I'm not perfect. Honestly, I do not want to be perfect. That is way too much pressure for me. My anxiety could not handle that. Once in a while, though, I will put up a post. I'll get caught up in the moment. I don't know. I don't really it could be that I'm just tired. I'm not making up excuses, but sometimes I'm just not on my A game.
Right.
Okay, so I put up a post, and I'm looking at the comments coming in. People are liking it, whatever. And for this particular example, I got 10 messages from my followers saying, I just feel like that current post you just put up is distasteful, mean-spirited, or as a therapist, I don't know, I'm confused. It doesn't really align with what you preach. And don't get me wrong, right? I'm human at the end of the day. So when people are kind of coming at me, even in a mature way, I can kind of get defensive, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? My intention is never to hurt anybody. So I kind of go right out of the gate with that. Like, what do you mean? I'm not mean. What did I do? But after some assessment, after it's been brought to my attention, and I'll say this has happened maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years. So I feel good about that. I try not to make these mistakes over and over again. I try to learn from it. But after I assessed it, I went, okay, I can actually see where this could not look kosher. I can see how this can be taken out of context, or maybe what I intended, it's just not translating. So instead of being a jerk, which a lot of us can be, it's very easy to be a jerk. Instead of ignoring the messages or just being like, no, I'm keeping it up just out of principle because this is my page, and if you don't like it, leave. I will generally take the approach of, if enough people think this is offensive, then maybe there's something there. And it doesn't take much effort for me just to take it down, humble myself. And what I'll do is I'll write you back. I'll write this person back and be like, you know what? I thank you for coming to me in a mature way, for expressing your concern. I have considered it, and I'm taking it down, and, thank you for your support. And, every single time that it's happened, which it has only happened 2 or 3 times, they'll come back and they'll be like, I really, really applaud you for just being super cool about this. Thank you. And I don't lose them as a follower. They stick around. They're open to it's not an idea. They're open to the notion that I am human. Sometimes I make a mistake. But with that said, I'm also human, and I can recognize when I make a mistake, and I can fix it.
Now, you bring up something interesting, and I don't know if you were even thinking about this in terms of a theoretical perspective, but I'm going to nerd out with you a little bit in terms of counseling and theories and just relationship interactions. So there is, I want to say it's dialectical behavioral therapy. And this is something that's typically used in the clinical setting for like people with borderline personality disorder. That's kind of where it got its start. But it says to go into interactions, and it's to kind of help you deal with how you dealt with this Instagram post. When you go into every interaction, you're typically looking for one of three things, okay? You're either trying to accomplish a task, right? Like you have something you need to get done on your to-do list. You're either trying to maintain a relationship, or you're trying to save face, right? Like stand up for yourself. So let's say there is a situation where, you just want to get your point across. You have a task to do. And so sometimes you will kind of put your own self-image on the back burner, maybe even like sacrifice a little bit of relationship value to get a task done. Okay. Your example is one where you were willing to kind of step back from getting a task done, which was your Instagram thing. And then also from your own personal ego, right? In honor of managing the relationship. And I think that this is something really awesome that we can take forward, moving forward in terms of this idea of saying, I'm sorry. If you're trying to maintain the relationship and you were wrong, then put those other two things aside and apologize.
Right.
And I think if we went into more interactions, if that's one thing I could take, and sometimes in these podcasts, we're going to get a little more clinical because we want to offer sound mental health advice, if for nothing else than to justify our massive student debt.
That, yes, 100%. Yeah, I'm going to start sweating thinking about it.
So this is like your free tip from therapists, is when you go into an interaction, think of it as one of those three ways. Are you trying to save face? Are you trying to save a relationship? Or are you trying to accomplish a task? And that is going to be an incredibly useful thing for you moving forward. So apologies are an important thing. And I think, Deanna, you could have been like, screw you. I got 300,000 followers. I don't need your like shade.
Right, 100%. So to touch on some DBT skills that I also want to talk about, because I completely agree with you. I could have absolutely taken the course of, I'm just trying to save face and, involve my ego and just be like, oh, you know what? Screw you. I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care about this message. I'm not even going to open it. I'm not going to write you back. Yeah, I could have done that easily. But with the DBT skills that we teach people is emotional regulation, our tolerance for distress, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness, right?
Right.
And so my followers mean a lot to me. In posts I talk about, I don't even like the word followers. I think of everybody who follows me on Instagram as a friend. This is a community that I really, really care about. And so it means something to me when there's a lot of people coming to me that are voicing kind of like a similar standpoint or like a similar, what am I trying to say here? I'm really asking you. God, what's the word?
Is this a rhetorical question?
Well, when they're all just like, okay, put it to you this way. When you've got 20 or 30 people coming to you going, you've done this thing, you've done A, and it's caused B, and we don't like it. You see what I'm saying?
Right. They're coming to you with the same feedback. It's not just one person.
It's not just one person, right. So maybe you should take pause to just assess the situation. Oh, my God, did I say something that might have been taken out of context? Did I miss something? Because once again, a part of DBT skills is this interpersonal effectiveness. I want to have strong interpersonal skills. So blowing off 10 people who have written me to say, hey, this doesn't feel right, would not align with what I'm trying to do here, and especially on Instagram, on the Hilarious Humanitarian account. I want to also be modeling effective communication skills, right?
Absolutely.
Which also brings me to another point of, if there is one person that's being a troll in the comment section, most of the time what I do is just delete them and immediately block them. I'm going to pay no attention to them because I'm not going to reinforce that behavior. Once in a while, I will call somebody out. And really, it's not for the benefit of my ego or, I'm going to attack you. What I'm doing is I'm actually modeling how I
conflict management, basically.
Conflict management,
Absolutely.
exactly. Because on Instagram, like, you're going to see my comment pop up. And it's more beneficial, as far as I'm concerned, for my followers who are like, you know, trying to do the right thing, to see how I deal with conflict. In fact, I've had a lot of people write me to say, like, I've learned so much with how you communicate to people who are just being rude or nasty or mean, or even just has like an opposing opinion.
One of the things I tell myself, and I tell myself this out of necessity, but I also have taken into my clinical practice, is when you're dealing with people who are coming at you, either they're offended by something you did or they're looking for a fight, I tell myself, don't give them the bullets to shoot you with. Because the reality is, when you're caught up in that conflict, if you say something in the heat of the moment, every good thing, every good point you made is null and void, because they will remember that time you called them a horrible name, or, you know, you broke where you cracked. So in terms of kind of some behind the scenes stuff when it comes to like online presence, if you have to scream into a pillow or, you know, call your friend up and talk about how mad you are about something someone did, whether online or in real life, but if you can handle your business and be the bigger person, and I know that sounds like something where you're like, "Argh," in the actual exchange, that is going to take you so much further. And also, nobody's got time for those cortisol levels skyrocketing through the roof. You got other things to be spending your energy on.
Right, 100%. You know, I'm really, really fortunate that I think presently there's like 310,000 people that follow me on Instagram, right? And people will say like, oh my God, do you get like a lot of like really weird messages? And I'm like, no, I don't. And you know what? I think a part of that is because I've worked so hard at like modeling mature kind of communication.
Yes, you set the bar high.
Right. I set the bar high. Exactly. And I'm not saying that to like boast or brag or anything, but I really feel like I've set the bar where people who are looking to be a troll will like come on my page and then be like,
this isn't easy pickings.
Yeah, I'm going to go somewhere else where it's just easier to be a turd. So
you're absolutely right. And I say the same thing in terms of like my radio career. You know, it's really easy to fall into a dynamic where, especially being a female lead, where it's like the dumb bimbo, right? Especially if you work on like a rock or alternative station, you know, the low hanging fruit is to go with the sex talk or the, you know, the raciness or this or that. And, oh God, let me get on my pedestal for a minute. If I hear one more prank call where somebody sends someone into a full blown panic or rage because they want to do their, oh, got you on the phone prank, I fucking hate you. Like,
people do that.
Oh God, all the time. And I feel like, come on, let's raise the bar here. You don't mess with people's emotions in that way. It drives me crazy. And talking to you about it right now, I'm like, rah! So anyway, I
always wonder, like, this is where my brain goes. It's like, okay, so they do that prank, and then what do they do the rest of the day?
Right. Laugh at their own joke.
Yeah, just like, that was a good one.
Meanwhile,
like, talking to themselves, I don't know.
Meanwhile, you gave somebody basically flavors of PTSD because they thought for a moment, you know, that their significant other was taking off with some unnamed girlfriend or boyfriend, and they think it's funny, or they've lost their job.
Awful.
Like, you don't, horrible. But anyway, that is where I would like to go with it. When you raise the bar, you require people to show up to that. And that's what I think is amazing about your followers, about people that listen to me, and about people that are listening to this podcast, is I think it's real easy to go for the low hanging fruit, but we're going to go for more than that. Now, I do want to move from sorries to the times you should have said you're sorry, but you didn't.
Oh, man. Okay.
We've all had those times in our earlier years. You and I are both in our 30s, but I think we can all reflect back to when we were younger and stubborn. Stubborn is probably the word, right? And prideful.
Right. Stubborn and prideful. I want to say real quick, because I think I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that I was kind of jerky in my 20s. I want to rephrase that. I don't think I was a jerk. I've been pretty consistent my whole life, mainly like goofy and awkward and whatever, sort of funny. My dad thinks I'm funny, you know. Okay. My mom thought I was funny. Anyhow, but yeah, in my 20s, I was very, very like prideful and just kind of like more like emotionally like explosive.
Okay, that makes sense. Me too.
Right? Like I feel like I can rein it back now. If I get really mad kind of going back to the Instagram thing, right? Sometimes somebody will say something so friggin' offensive and just so nasty that I will, like, in my 20s, like, I'm really actually, I feel grateful that I didn't have an Instagram like in my early 20s. I think about that all the time, like, oh my God, like the stuff that people put out there, it's like sword in the stone, like it's permanent, it's like on the internet. I'm really grateful that I wasn't on the internet in my like early 20s, because I think if somebody offended me, maybe I would have gone after them and called them a name. I don't know. And now if somebody calls me a name, I'm literally just like, yeah, whatever, delete, block. It just doesn't even affect me.
I think when I look back on like when I was younger, I know, and maybe this will resonate with some people, is I was trying to prove myself in so many ways. And I think looking back, I was really just trying to prove myself to me. But in a professional context, I was also one of very few. There was like one other female at the time that worked at the station that I worked at, and then she was gone. And so I felt like in some cases I was kind of pigeonholed as being emotional, right? Because that's like a word that sometimes people higher up want to throw at you when you care, because it's demeaning and makes it seem like you don't have your act together. So,
right, like you're unstable.
Right, because I'm emotional. So I was like, you know what? If you're going to paint me the loudmouth bitch or whatever, then I'm going to use this opportunity to say everything I want to say now because you did this.
Right.
When really, as I've gotten older, I've realized that's not really going to get me anywhere.
Like in talking about this, all of a sudden, like memories are now flooding
back. Yeah.
So an example I have is in my early 20s, I would be like dating a guy, and our relationship would hit a point where it's like, this is clearly not going anywhere anymore. And I would become like resentful and angry, but I wouldn't break up like right away. I would almost kind of like stay in it and kind of like force it. And then what would happen is, I don't think I was emotionally like abusive. God, I don't know.
But you weren't very nice. Maybe were you just trying to get him to break up with you?
Yeah, like
yes,
I kind of was. Like, oh God, like it's just, isn't that a weird dynamic? I don't want to hurt your feelings.
So I'm going to hurt your feelings.
So I'm going to hurt your feelings so that you break up with me. How counterintuitive. And I know so many people have gone through that.
Guilty.
And right, exactly. And I've gone through it a couple of times in my early 20s. And I owe some people an apology. I don't even think I know that I've apologized once to an ex-boyfriend, but there's somebody probably out there that I didn't, and probably I owe an apology to. Now, now I'm married, but like if I were single and dating or whatever, in my like late 20s, early 30s when I was dating, if it wasn't working, like I just wouldn't even get to a place of being mean or short or irritated with you. I would just like, this just isn't working, and let's just end it before it gets weird.
I was doing the online dating thing not too long ago until I hit the jackpot, but it was a weird thing to like tell somebody not interested. That's why I think people ghost so much, is because it's such an awkward conversation to have, to be like, look, it's not you, it's me, or I'm just not interested. And oh gosh, yeah, that was a weird one to encounter. One thing that I think I want to bring up on this apologies, and sometimes we should say we're sorry. And I want you to think back to maybe when you were younger and your parents owed you an apology. Mm-hmm. Like they did something and you were like, they were wrong and they should have apologized. And instead, parents, myself included, I find myself sometimes, and my kids are older, you're not to this point yet really with your little one, but there are times when I don't want to apologize to my kids because I'm the parent and I said so. And, my pride gets back in the way, and I don't want them to think that they're going to be able to pull one up or over on me later. But there are times I've really had to step back and apologize to my kids for being wrong. Mm-hmm. And that is so incredibly difficult to do. And I challenge anybody to tell me it's not, because you're not really being honest.
I'm like interested, right? Because my daughter is just turned 1. And I think about this stuff all the time. How am I going to approach this? I don't want to make her feel like, oh my God, Mom, stop with talking about your feelings and this and that, I don't want my daughter feeling like I'm putting her in therapy with me.
Right.
I want to be mom to her. But like, is there like an example you can provide? The thing that I'm thinking about is like I've seen with people who have children, they're having like an off day. The parent is having an off day. They're irritated, something happened at work, and so they're just short with everybody in the family. And your kids come home and they're hyper and they're jumping all over the place, and like one of them knocks the plate over and it crashes to the floor. And even though, an appropriate response, no matter how you feel, is being somewhat disappointed because now there's a broken plate on the ground, sometimes when we're like super stressed out, the punishment like doesn't fit the crime.
It's over
like,
the top.
It's over the top, like, oh my God, like you smash the plate and just kind of flip out. But what I've seen some of my friends do is they'll go back after they've cooled down and they'll sit their kid down and just be like, okay, so this is what happened today. Mommy was stressed out or daddy was stressed out and I yelled at you, and, like they apologize for it just being a little over the top.
Right.
And I think it's a good opportunity for kids to see like, okay, mommy and daddy get stressed sometimes. And for them to also know like maybe today is not the day to do cartwheels in our small hallway, knocking down frames and whatnot.
I think that this also comes back to what we were talking about in terms of DBT, the therapeutic approach we were talking about, in that, yes, but see, in that case, that's relationship management. That is putting aside your ego as a parent and apologizing and using it as a teaching moment. So I've had lots of those moments. Especially, I have a kid who's he sometimes has some issues with monitoring his own emotions, gets a little explosive at times, and then he's also very smart. And sometimes, I'll give you an example. So we're driving home. Wednesdays are the day that I get them, or maybe it was a Thursday. It was after dance, and it's kind of late, and I had worked my 3 jobs that day. And I had said something about the coming week he was going to be spending the night at an aunt's house, and then he got mad. And it turned into this conversation where I'm like tired. It's been a long day. And my kid is telling me, crying from the back seat, I feel like other people parent us and not you because you work all the time. And I'm just like about ready to have a meltdown, right? And in that moment, I could have been like, you don't understand. I work to put food on the table and blah, 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 and gone off the rails, right? But he needed his feelings validated because he's right. Because at 7, he recognizes that there are working moms and dads, that some of us can't go to the field trips. And not to say that, he shouldn't be, he wasn't throwing it in my face in terms of like a guilt trip, because I know the difference. He deserved an apology in a sense, that the validating of his feelings. Now,
right, 100%.
And this kind of lends into the next kind of sorry we were talking about, which is I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I'm going to validate your feelings, but also here's reality, right?
Right.
And so I think for parenting, we need to step back. And sometimes I need to really remind myself of when are those times when I'm getting real prideful as a parent, like, because I said so. That's why I have to think about like, man, what difference would have made if my parents would have said sorry sometimes when they should have.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think that there's a huge point here. I love how you're talking about how, he just in the moment needed his feelings validated, and they are valid. I'm sure you even have, I don't want to speak for you, but like if I was working 3 jobs and you're all over the place and you get up like super early and you have really late nights, I mean, seriously, I'll look on your Instagram and be like, wait, I know she gets up really early and now she's at a concert till midnight. Like, when do you sleep? I would be like a walking zombie. I'm sure you have your own feelings about not seeing your kids as much as you want to. It's hard, especially when our children or our friends or our family bring up something that you also have some pretty like heavy feelings about, like it can just get highly emotional and
very fast.
Really, really quickly. So it's good to just take a pause, and if you can't say anything, it's so corny, but if you can't say anything nice, just chill out for a second, take a pause, and just at the very least, what you can do is validate the person's feelings, because at the end of the day, you can't change that. they are their feelings, you know?
Right.
That's their feelings. They're expressing them to you.
You don't have to agree to validate, but sometimes, and I know this from my own personal work in going to my own therapist, for me, it was validating was what I needed. I didn't need an apology in some cases. I understand that circumstances are sometimes beyond your control, but that validating of feelings can be so absolutely just pivotal in the development of a person's self-worth.
Right. I'm thinking of an example. This has happened a lot, actually, like, I don't know, at least 20 times throughout my like adult life, right? I hurt somebody's feelings. They come to me and they'll say, you know, Deanna, you said this, or your behaviors did this, and you hurt my feelings. Now, I'm hearing what they're saying. They're telling me that I hurt their feelings. But when I like reflect back, it might have played out completely differently in my mind. Wait a second, like I totally didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean it like that. Whatever I said was taken out of context. Or let's take it to the place of like, maybe, like, you know, sometimes you get hurt and then you tell somebody they hurt you and they're like, kind of make fun of you for that. Like, what are you talking about?
That's
like,
stupid.
That's stupid. You shouldn't feel that way, you know? Guys, don't do that. If somebody's coming to you and they're saying you hurt them, you don't have to understand necessarily how they got to that place. You might not even agree. You might in the back of your head be like, what is this person talking about? I didn't mean it that way. None of it matters. If somebody has kind of like the way I see it is like if they have the guts and they care about the relationship enough to approach you to say, hey, you hurt my feelings. It takes nothing really other than putting your pride aside just to say, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings.
Right.
It really just like keep it simple. You don't even really have to go into like what transpired per se. You do have a difference of opinion on how things played out, but what the thing you're focused on now is you hurt this person's feelings, you care about them, you obviously don't want to hurt them, so just apologize for it.
And this is where it comes into line of maybe you're sorry because you hurt their feelings, but you're not really sorry about the way it all went down.
Exactly. Like it could have been like growing up, my mom would always tell me, Deanna, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I continue to have to work on this throughout my life. Till the day I die, I know I'm going to have to be working on this. And it's not even just about appearing aggressive or it could even be just, oh my God, when I say things, I literally feel like I sound awkward, like the way I say things. I'm constantly working on my delivery because delivery is very, very important, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that gets lost too because people do so much communication now via text.
Right. I am like obsessive with sending this smiley emoji, you know, with everything. Because I'm like, it feels like it's a softer delivery. Like, okay, well, God,
LOL.
Yeah, like constant LOLs. I just want people to know, like, the way I'm talking to them is friendly and happy. In fact, I'm so obsessive with this that when I don't send smiley faces, and after I had my daughter, I was really bad with, like, texting back in a timely manner and forgetting the smiley faces. And I actually would have friends like, are you okay? Are you mad at me? Because the texting sometimes comes off as like you're being short.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I feel like the smiley faces and the little GIF pictures that we send like kind of softens the message because the message is actually fun and funny, but sometimes...
No, here's the thing. You can't use the funny smiley emojis and faces when you're just being a jerk via text. Because I've also had that situation where someone has said something horrible on purpose and then they're like, smiley face.
What is that, like passive aggressive texting?
Yeah. Don't put that in the passive aggressiveness. I did want to give a solid example, though. You know, we give these big examples sometimes when we're talking about these situations, but this was like a pivotal moment that just happened the other day. In my own life. So my partner had said something and I just responded like, see, there you go. Awesome. Well, it was taken and this was a couple days later, it was brought up and it was just for clarification. And And the see what I mean? Like was kind of delivered in a sense that, or was interpreted, wasn't delivered, but was interpreted in a sense of, see what I mean? Like condescending, like
condescending,
you're being dumb, right? When in actuality, if this conversation would have taken place in person, my whole demeanor would have been taken in. There probably would have been like a, see what I mean? Like you got it, and a hug and a kiss and oh my God, awesome, right? What I appreciated, though, is that's such a little thing, but it was brought up because if you don't bring those things up, then you start censoring yourself on the next thing. And then you start censoring yourself on the next thing. And then me over here, I have no idea I did any of that to cause that. And then it changes the whole trajectory of where this relationship is. Now, this could be with a partner. It could be with a kid. It could be with your friends. It could be with your boss. But we just have to be like really honest about those moments when something kind of rubs us wrong, right? And then on the other end of that, if we want people to be honest with us and develop these vulnerable, connected relationships, then we have to be willing to take the feedback and not get defensive.
Exactly. Yeah. And once again, like kind of going back to the whole DBT skills, right? The interpersonal effectiveness. This is a skill. We're not trying to say that this is easy.
No, you're going to suck at it for a really long time, actually.
Yeah, and it's still going to be bumpy, and it's hard. It's really hard to be honest, especially being honest about uncomfortable things or when people upset us. But there is a way to try to communicate those issues so that it doesn't get out of context or blow up. But I completely agree with you. The whole like sweeping it underneath the rug, not only are you robbing that person of having like a good, like kind of healthy, fluid like relationship with you, but you're robbing yourself because you're going to be walking around the type of stuff that gets swept underneath the rug or brushed off or not resolved, not addressed. It takes on a cumulative effect, right? Which is why you end up in these friendships or relationships where you reach a boiling point and it's like, I can't take it anymore because they're like chewing their gum too loud.
Exactly.
And it's like 10 years worth of unresolved, unaddressed issues just come out. Oh my God, in 1995, you did this.
Exactly.
And it's not fair to the person who never got an opportunity to like fix it.
Right.
So we're not saying it's easy, but it's not going to be in any way easy if you like let a certain behavior or something that's really upsetting you like from another person, if you just let it continue, because how do they know what to fix or that it's upsetting you if you don't say a word?
Right. Like I jokingly say this personally and professionally. I have a lot of skills, but I am not a mind reader. You know, I could be really good at a lot of things, but if I'm supposed to read your mind, it's not one of them. One thing I did want to bring up in the sorry, not sorry category, since we're talking about growing new skill sets, is that you shouldn't be sorry for your personal growth. And if you are truly making steps in a direction to make some really significant changes, which, by the way, it has the butterfly effect. It will change your relationships moving forward and the satisfaction you get out of your life. You should not be sorry for that growth. And I don't know if that falls into the sorry, not sorry category or the not sorry at all category that we started off with, but I think that's important to bring up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to bring this up. There was an article that I saw a couple of years ago, and it was talking about women just like upset, like compulsively saying, not even compulsively, but us saying I'm sorry with like mundane things. Let me give you an example. You're in a conference room with your coworkers or employees, and you reach across the desk to get a piece of paper, and your hand, I don't know, grazes over somebody or whatever. And it's constantly like, oh, I'm sorry. Or how about this? You're walking down a hallway and somebody is not paying attention and they bump into you and you say, I'm sorry. Wait, why am I sorry? I was the one walking in a straight line. You were the one not paying attention.
Right.
And when I read that article, it dawned on me like, oh my God, I am saying I'm sorry a lot. So now that I'm aware of it, I can make changes. So for example, if somebody bumps into me, instead of me saying I'm sorry, I will say, oh, excuse you or excuse me. I've kind of like switched I'm sorry to just like a polite excuse me.
Yeah.
You know,
like, whoops.
Whoops, right. Like if I'm needing to lean over to get a piece of paper, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, excuse me, or can you please pass me that piece of paper? You know, this is like a skill that we need to, I don't know if it's a skill, but I had a conversation with my girlfriends after I read this article. I'm like, do you girls do this? Because after reading this article, I realized like just how much I do this.
Right. And I think that's a great thing to kind of challenge yourself moving forward. And we had talked about that in a previous podcast. Challenge yourself in little ways. And it could be just monitoring how many times you say you're sorry. For instance, I teach an addictions counseling course, and we, in the beginning of the semester, they had to give up something, right? They had to fill out an abstinence contract. And one of the kids, she's not a kid, she's an adult, but anyway, she did I'm sorry. She gave up apologizing in the way that exactly what you're talking about. And so throughout the semester, we were tracking relapses and things like that. And it was interesting to see the shift.
Right.
And it can grow your self-confidence when you're not apologizing for taking up space. Now, one thing I want to do, I had something I wanted to finish with. It was a reading that falls right in this, but I did want to touch on when you don't need to be sorry at all. For instance, we talked about on Instagram, sometimes when you call people out, I get sometimes in this field of doing radio where people will make outwardly sexist, rude comments, and they will not say it to my male co-host, but they'll say it to me. So for instance, I did an Instagram live, a first one before we started recording today. And some guy thought he was being funny, and he's like, hey, for $20-$30, why don't you tip that phone down? Because I'm wearing a shirt and I have huge boobs. Okay. They're on lockdown right now under a sports bra, but I have huge boobs, so you can see just the tiniest bit of cleavage. And so what he was doing is on this Instagram live telling me to show him my boobs. Now, that's not me. If you know me like that, pardon my language, that shit ain't gonna fly. So I called him out on it right there. One, I'm not sorry for calling you out for being a pig. And two, you need to correct yourself because that's inappropriate.
So even if you were into it, I'm sorry.
Then you do you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm sorry. Maybe I do like showing off my boobs. I don't care, but I get to choose who I get to show them to. So you just jumping on my Instagram feed or my Facebook feed behind a computer screen, like you're a creep and you're a pig. So
stop.
Be gone.
And I'm not sorry.
Stop it. Exactly.
Stop it. And so you call people out on that one. So I wanted to finish with this, and I've saved this to myself, and it's, I think, really kind of a fitting way to wrap this up as we talk about apologies. And specifically, apologize when you need to apologize, but don't apologize for the space you take up. And this is a quote from Owen Lindley. It says, "You know what breaks me? When someone is visibly excited about a feeling or an idea or a hope or a risk taken, and they'll tell you about it, but they preface it with, sorry, this is dumb, but..." He says, don't do that. I don't know who came here before me, who conditioned you to think you had to apologize or feel obtuse, but not here. Dream so big it's silly, laugh so hard it's obnoxious, love so much it's impossible. And don't you ever feel unintelligent. And don't you ever apologize. And don't you ever shrink so you can squeeze yourself into small places and small minds. Grow. It's a really big world. There's room. You fit, I promise.
What do I owe you?
I love that.
I am feeling good.
I know.
That was a good quote.
Right.
You got to text message me that one.
I know. We totally nailed it today.
Right. And by the way, if you run into me hard, I am not saying I'm sorry.
And if you do the awkward dance with me in the hallway, I will tell you, want to dance, and just know I will step all over your feet.
I love it.
All right. This has been our podcast number 6.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we will see ya on Instagram. My Instagram, once again, is Hilarious Humanitarian. Also, Humanitarian Mom for all those that want to laugh at me exploring parenthood. And Frances is over on Shut Up Skippy on Instagram. Once again, our podcast, Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast, can be found on iTunes and Google Play. So check us out, subscribe, give us those 5-star ratings, and write a little review. And we'll see you guys next time.